Well, welcome to Skills to Pay the Bills in today's segment of JustAskFreeman.com. I'm your host, Freeman Owen Jr. Alongside of me is my lovely co-host and wife, Carolyn Owen. Carolyn, we've got a lot to cover today, especially when we're talking about IRA rollovers. So let's get started.
Well, Freeman, 2018 is almost up. And people are looking at their investments, their retirement funds, and tax liability to see what they need to do not only to protect what they have, but to think about how they can better manage what they have left. So today, let's get back to basics and talk about IRA rollovers.
All right, let's do this. What is an IRA rollover?
Well, IRA rollover does not involve current income tax deductions, but rather it is a method through which tax-favored retirement plan assets can be transferred from one plan to another while maintaining their tax-favored status.
Exactly. So we got about 6 different items here to cover. When can we use an IRA rollover? So let's begin with the IRA rollover to IRA transfer. Here are the funds. It's very simple. It's a transfer of funds in an IRA account that's transferred to another custodian to retain the tax-favored status or tax deferred as a non-taxable event. Number 2, let's look at qualified plans to roll over to an IRA, such as a 401k, TSP, 403b. Again, the distributions are transferred or rolled over out from the qualified plan, employer-sponsored retirement account, to an IRA, and you retain your the tax-deferred status, and plus, it's a non-taxable event. Now, one of the things I want to cover, Carolyn, is the conduit IRA. Young kids today, when I say young kids, I mean young men and women, they usually are employed 5 or 6 years, and then they change and go to another job. So they're changing jobs every 5 or 6 years. The reason that they are asked to open employer-sponsored retirement accounts because many companies do not offer a pension. So when you talk about conduit rollover, it is an employer-sponsored retirement account held by most of the time by young people in this case. Okay. All right, they transfer or roll over the existing employer-sponsored retirement account to another. Now, just like our nephew. All right. Now, he's changed jobs over the last 15 years several times. And he is a good kid, too, because he was obedient. And we say, well, fill up your 401k on this job. In 5 years, you probably will transfer or go to another job. And the first position he had, it didn't have a pension. Okay, well, he started a 401k. 5 years later, he carried the existing 401k to another employer, so he transferred. So the conduit, we see that quite often, since many companies do not offer any type of pension, and our kids have a what they call a trail of employer-sponsored retirement accounts. Let's talk about inherited IRAs, Carol.
Well, with the inherited IRAs rollover, the spouse IRA beneficiary can roll over the proceeds of an inherited IRA and continue to defer income taxation.
Exactly.
Now, this differs from the non-spousal IRA beneficiary.
Non-spousal IRA, I'm glad we're hitting on that. I suggest if you're a non-spouse, nephew, child, friend, transfer those monies that you inherit to a new trustee immediately, because you have to take a distribution from that IRA that you inherit within 12 months. And usually when you inherit it, those monies are coming from a deceased former IRA participant. So to avoid adverse tax consequences, with an inherited IRA, it's good to transfer it from one trustee to another without even touching the funds until the inherited IRA is set up. Something else I want to add too, Carolyn. Okay. We're talking about spousal IRAs. The spouse can take advantage of the opportunity to place the decedent's IRA into his or her IRA. And something I want to elaborate on also. Suppose the decedent was taking what we call required minimum distributions, which we're going to talk about either in this segment or the next segment. The spouse will have to start taking the distribution, all right, immediately based on the life expectancy of the deceased spouse. Another key thing about the spousal inherited IRA is that in the event that there was no RMDs or required minimum distributions, and I'll clarify that a little bit for our viewing audience, is where the Treasury Department demands or mandates that you take a withdrawal each year from pre-tax money or employer-sponsored retirement accounts or IRAs. When the spouse receives these funds, he or she doesn't have to take any type of distribution. So that's the difference and the contrast between non-spouses, which is mandatory to take that distribution within 12 months, all right? Or there's adverse tax consequences. So I wanted to elaborate that a little bit. One thing I want to talk about too, Carolyn, is the conversion of a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA.
Well, you know, with that, a traditional IRA can be rolled over to a Roth IRA, but the income taxes must be paid on the pre-tax amounts rolled over in to the IRA in the year of the rollover. But there's no premature withdrawal tax on that.
And that's a good thing too, because when you convert, and this is important, a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, you have to pay the taxes up front. And like you said, within the year of which the transfer occurs. There is a penalty if you do not take these funds, or you, no, I shouldn't say take those funds, when you attempt to convert a traditional IRA to a Roth, and you don't pay the taxes on the amount that should have been paid for to convert the traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. What about a rollover from a traditional qualified plan to a Roth IRA? Now here, I'm going to talk about this for a minute.
All right.
Participants that are in a employer-sponsored retirement account. Let me define that: 401k, the TSP, 403b, the 457, governmental plan. You can convert the traditional monies in the employer-sponsored retirement account and roll it over or roll over out or transfer to another qualified plan or an IRA. Again, we must pay the taxes within the year the transfer took place. That's very, very important. Now, what about a rollover to a Roth IRA? Say from a Roth account to a Roth IRA.
Well, you know, participants who receive a distribution from a Roth account in a qualified plan need to roll that distribution over into a Roth IRA in order to maintain the tax-free status of the future distributions.
Exactly. Now, what we're going to talk about next are the requirements for an IRA rollover.
Well, you know, there are two ways the funds can be transferred between IRAs, Freeman. First is a trustee-to-trustee transfer.
Exactly.
And it exists, trustee of the existing IRA transfers the fund directly to the trustee of the receiving IRA. And a trustee-to-transfer transfer can be done as many times as one wishes.
Exactly. You can transfer from one account IRA that's classified as an IRA as many times as you wish. But here's the kicker. Suppose you do an IRA and the funds are distributed to you directly. That's not a great idea. We're going to talk about that. All right. Now, once these funds are received, you have 60 days in order to transfer or roll these monies over to a qualified plan. Now, what if you don't? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute here too.
Okay.
Now, the thing is about the direct, when you receive the monies in hand and you have 60 days to make the contribution to a new IRA, you only can do one rollover per year. And as you mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago here, that you can transfer IRAs as many times as you like, but you only get one rollover within 365 days.
And sometimes I think people may not realize that no matter how many IRAs they have, they can only roll over one per year. It's the aggregate of all that.
Exactly. It's the total of all qualified dollars, both your IRA, your traditional IRAs, and your Roth. Okay. Now, distributions from qualified plans, as I mentioned, must be rolled over within 60 days. All right, following receipt of the distribution. Now, to avoid this type of common mistake, you just go from trustee to trustee, because there's a 20% withholding, like I said. Now, something else too. When you do the rollover within 60 days, you know, you got 80% of the proceeds, because the plan participant is required to take 20%, withhold 20% from that distribution, all righty? When you roll over in 60 days, you have to roll over 100%. That is, you got to make up the other 20%. So if the rollover is from a traditional qualified plan to a Roth, it must be a direct transfer from custodian to custodian, or trustee to trustee transfer. Now, in the case of an inherited IRAs, excuse me, what we just talked about here, that's where it is most applicable, especially to spouse IRA beneficiaries. Now, in non-spouses, any distributions received by the non-spouse, okay, inherited by a non-spouse beneficiary, should be directly transferred from the deceased owner's IRA, I've had experience with that, to ownership of the IRA, and go from trustee to trustee. Because if you put these monies in hand, it's a taxable event. Yes. All right. You already have to take these monies out anyway within 12 months of the decedent, Carolyn, and you can either set it up just like there was an example. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to hold that note for me, okay? Because I want to elaborate a little bit more in the case of a non-spousal IRA beneficiary, and plus, I want to share the experience we had where we had two siblings, alrighty, who inherit the proceeds, receive the legacy of qualified money or pre-tax dollars. One of them made a mistake and the other did not make a mistake. So I just want to elaborate on that when we get ready to come back here. It's time for a short station break. We return after these important messages. Stay with us. You're listening to Skills to Pay the Bills, or you're looking at Skills to Pay the Bills with the JustAskFreeman.com segment. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us on Skills to Pay the Bills in today's segment of JustAskFreeman.com. You know, Carolyn, prior to the break, we were discussing what is an IRA rollover, what is the tax ramifications if we make mistakes. A lot of folks make mistakes, and what we do in our practice, I'm gonna plug this a little bit, is that we help a lot of folks avoid costly mistakes when it comes to these pre-tax and qualified plans. In the case of the non-spouse beneficiary, I was getting ready to tell you about, I wanted to share this story. True story. We have two siblings, one is 31 and one is 36. They were receiving inherited money from
their mother.
From the mother. And one of them, all right, took a lump sum. Alrighty, and she decided that she wanted a lump sum, and was harnessed with a very large tax bill the next year, around April 15th, around tax time. They were 31 and 36 years old, respectively. The 36-year-old decided to allow us to set up what we call an inherited IRA or multi-generational IRA. The 36-year-old is receiving benefits over a 50 or 60-year period there based on his life expectancy. So there was two mistakes made by the 31-year-old sibling. Number one, took a lump sum and was taxed at her level, okay, tax bracket, under 59 and a half. That's another, well, we're going to talk about that in this segment. And then a filing fee as well. So that was a costly mistake. Meanwhile, today, the 36-year-old sibling is receiving payments that's going to last him 50, 55, 60 years. So, you know, doing these rollovers are very complex. Various employer-sponsored retirement plans differ. There are certain rules and restrictions on those plans. So what we've been able to do, and folks, if you like to get, you know, if our viewers would like to get a rollover kit, it's free. Just go to our website, www.justaskfreeman.com, and we'll gladly answer any questions that you may have. So, like I said, rollover requirements can be complex. It depends on the original source of those funds and the objectives of the IRA rollover. So I would even seek professional tax advice. Now, of course, we don't give investment tax or legal advice, but these rollovers can be very, very complex, and we have to make sure that there is no adverse tax consequences and errors. So we're able to help many of our clients here. Now, there are different types of rollovers permitted in 2018. Let me have your take on that.
Okay, well, you know, there's the Economic Growth and Tax Relief Reconciliation Act of 2001. And what this did, it increased the portability of the retirement plan assets by allowing rollovers between all types of retirement plans.
Exactly.
Now, certain rollover restrictions were eased as well. So the Pension Protection Act of 2006 made all these changes permanent.
It made a big difference, Carolyn. Eligible plans now, at one time, inherited IRAs, even for spouses, you had to take a distribution and subject to taxation on every distribution. Now the eligible, when I say eligible rollover distributions from qualified plans, 401ks, TSPs, drop programs that a lot of firemen have in deferred comp. Section 457 plans can be rolled over to any other types of qualified plans, providing if that plan will accept those funds, all right? And the 457 governmental plan must separately account for funds received from qualified plans. 403B, annuities, or IRAs may or may not accept these funds. Now, how about spousal rollovers, when we have distributions from a qualified plan play into a surviving spouse?
Well, when you have distribution of a qualified plan paid to the surviving spouse of a deceased participant, that may be rolled over within 60 days to another qualified plan.
Exactly.
Section 403B, regular IRA, or Section 457 plan.
We can't put enough emphasis on it, even for the spouse receiving the monies or proceeds from the decedent's IRA. We got to get the program started so that you become the owner, the spousal, or the surviving spouse, or surviving spousal IRA. That has to be implemented very, very quickly.
In 60 days.
Exactly. Now, when it comes to the maximum amount eligible for the rollover, okay, any funds that are withdrawn from that IRA and not rolled over is subject to taxation. So you have to, folks make mistakes. I've seen them when they come to us and they may have taken a distribution from one of their qualified plans they weren't familiar with. The ramifications or the consequences of taxation on that withdrawal. And they take huge amounts out, and let's say you got $500,000 there, they'll take a couple of $100,000 in purchase or have a down payment on a home. There are withdrawal methods such that you can take monies from that qualified plan. You can even borrow money from the employer-sponsored retirement account. But you got to be careful when you separate from service. If that money is not paid back, then you're subject to taxation. Those funds are subject to taxation. But I've seen folks buy depreciating objects from their 401k or the TSP, automobiles. But you know, there's options to elect. First-time home buyer, $10,000, hardship that can be brought in, education, but there are limits on how much can be withdrawn without penalties and taxes, all right? Let's look at the Roth IRA participants.
Well, participants in a traditional or non-Roth qualified plan can roll distributions over to a Roth IRA. Now, the rollover amount less any after-tax contributions is included in the gross income for the year.
Yeah, you know what's important here, Carolyn? Yeah, you can take and receive a distribution from the qualified plan, need to roll over the Roth into a Roth. You mentioned the fact that to maintain the income tax-free character of the Roth distribution. Well, some folks say it's important to know where, this is what's important, to know where to get the monies from in order to pay the taxes in the year that the transfer is taking place. I'll give you a good example. I'll make it simple. Let's have $100,000 and we want to roll this money into a Roth. All right. Let's say you're in the 24% tax bracket. You take $24,000 out of your $100,000 of pre-tax money, okay? The $24,000 is subject to taxation, and then you only have, what did I say, 24,000. Then you only have a $76,000 Roth. So you're taxed twice, okay? Pre-taxed. Hardship exception, we've got the Secretary of the Treasury, the authority to waive the 60-day rule where rollovers failure to comply due to casualty, disaster, or events beyond the reasonable control of the taxpayer. Now, if the 60-day rule is not met for a variety of specific reasons, such as an error on the part of the financial institution, taxpayer can make a written certification, alrighty, to an IRA trustee or plan administrator. And then he or she can rely on the taxpayer's self-certification and accept the rollover. Folks, I would consult a tax advisor for that in the event that you need to make that type of move. You can go to our website and get a free rollover kit. Go to www.justaskfreeman.com. Now, next subject is indirect rollovers.
Yeah, the indirect rollover is when the distribution is first paid to the employee, and who then has 60 days following receipt of the distribution to roll the funds over to the trustee of the new employee responsible retirement plan or to a traditional IRA.
Exactly, and under federal law, if the distribution is first paid to the employee, the plan administrator, I'll reemphasize, is required to withhold 20% of that distribution. While you receive 80% of the distribution, you're required within 60 days to roll over 100%. You got to come back with that 100% of the distribution to a new qualified retirement plan or to a regular IRA, all right? And that's to avoid that income being subject, that additional 20% is subject to penalty and taxes. This means that, as I said earlier, you make up that 20%, all right, that is withheld out of those funds. When you file your tax return for the year, you may get that 20% refunded. You may. It depends on your tax situation. That's why it would be a good thing to. I'm not a real advocate of the indirect IRA distributions because we're human beings who make mistakes. We might wait till the 61st day and then try to dash in there and come up or short of the 20% to need to go with that 80% in order to avoid taxation the following year. To avoid that mandatory 20% withholding, a direct rollover should be used.
Yes, that's when funds are transferred directly from the trustee of the original qualified retirement to the new trustee.
Exactly.
IRA.
Trustee to trustee transfer. And so by arranging for a direct transfer, don't take these monies in hand. Trustee's name that will be receiving it, making sure that they can accept those qualified plans. It's simple. Trustee to trustee, and then you avoid all the costs of the taxation and penalties for accepting these funds in hand. I want to talk just briefly about bankruptcy protection. Funds in an employer-sponsored retirement account are protected from the reach of creditors in the event of bankruptcy. Now, IRA assets have been questionable. The protection has been questionable over the years, okay, because effective October 17, 2005, up to $1 million of traditional and Roth assets, now when I say the aggregate, became protected from bankruptcy creditors. So I want folks to understand that for this reason, it's generally preferable to segregate IRA rollovers or IRA assets into a separate IRA account. So we don't want to commingle that. What we're just saying, it's applicable to an owner's IRA assets. The Supreme Court decision ruled that funds in an inherited IRA are not protected in the event of the beneficiary's bankruptcy. So in essence, when you're a non-spouse, you inherit these funds, it's not protected against this bankruptcy stuff. All right. The clock on the wall says the time is up for today's segment, but before we end, IRA rollover requirements can be complex. And depending on the original source of the funds and objectives of the IRA rollover, different requirements may apply. You can seek professional tax advice before implementing an IRA rollover in order to avoid unforeseen or negative tax consequences. So if you have any questions about our segment today, please give us a call at 1-866-471-7233 or email us at freeman@justaskfreeman.com, and we'll answer your questions, send you a free retirement kit, or better yet, we'll send you a rollover kit. And I want to thank you so much for watching today's segment. Be sure to tune in next week for another great segment. This is Freeman and Carolyn Owen wishing you a fantastic week.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Carolyn.